The new apartment was a steal. That's what everyone said. A 2-bedroom in the city for half the market price. The realtor just smiled and handed me the keys. I didn't ask why the previous tenant left so suddenly. I didn't notice the scratches on the inside of the front door. I was too busy imagining my new life. The first night, I slept like a log. The second night, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. Not groggy, not confused. Wide awake, as if someone had called my name. I lay still, listening to the silence. That's when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic scraping. Coming from the bathroom vent. I told myself it was the pipes. Old buildings settle. Rats nest in the walls. I turned on the light, and the sound stopped. I stared at the vent cover. It was perfectly still. I went back to bed. But the next morning, I noticed something on the bathroom floor. A thin line of dust, leading from the vent to the sink. Like something had dragged itself out and back. I laughed it off. I cleaned it up. That night, I set a glass of water on the counter. I wanted to prove to myself that nothing was moving. At 3:17 a.m., I heard the scraping again. Louder. More insistent. I didn't get up. I pulled the covers over my head and waited for dawn. A week passed. I learned the schedule. The scraping started at 3:17 a.m. every single night. Sometimes it was just a few minutes. Other times it lasted until the first light of dawn. I started sleeping on the couch. I told my coworkers I was renovating the bedroom. They believed me. Then I found the drawing. It was tucked behind the fridge, stuck to the side with a faded magnet. A child's drawing. A stick figure in a bed. A dark shape crawling out of a square on the wall. And red scribbles. So much red. On the back, in a shaky adult hand, was a single word. Run. I called the landlord. He said the previous family moved out in a hurry. A domestic issue, he claimed. He didn't know more. I didn't believe him. I bought a flashlight and a screwdriver. That Saturday, I unscrewed the vent cover in the bathroom. The darkness inside was absolute. I shone the light in. The shaft was wider than I expected. Big enough for a person to crawl through. The metal walls were scratched. Deep, parallel gouges. Like fingernails. And at the bottom, far below, I saw something. A small, red toy car. I reached for it. My fingers touched the cold plastic. Then I heard breathing. Not my own. It was coming from above me. Slow. Wet. Hungry. I dropped the flashlight. It clattered down the shaft, the beam spinning wildly before landing on its side, illuminating the walls. I scrambled backward, hitting my head on the sink. I didn't care. I grabbed the vent cover and slammed it back into place. I screwed it in with shaking hands. The breathing stopped. I sat on the bathroom floor, heart pounding, until the sun came up. I didn't sleep for days. I boarded up every vent in the apartment. I called a locksmith. I was going to move. I was packing my bags when I heard it. Not scraping this time. A voice. A small, thin voice, like a child's, coming from the bedroom vent. It said, "You forgot to lock the kitchen one." I pressed my ear against the cold metal. Nothing. Just my own ragged breathing. But I knew what I saw. Fingers. Small, pale fingers reaching through the darkness of that shaft. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, staring at the bathroom door. The next night, the scraping came earlier. 2:45 a.m. It was louder now. More insistent. I grabbed my phone and called my sister. She told me I was stressed, that I needed a vacation. I hung up when the scratching turned to tapping. Tap. 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 3 times. A pattern. I started leaving the bathroom light on at night. It didn't help. The shadows seemed to move differently now. I found myself checking corners, opening closet doors before entering a room. My coworkers asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I was lying. On Sunday, I went to the hardware store. I bought a crowbar and a heavy-duty flashlight. The cashier asked if I was doing renovations. I said yes. I didn't tell him I was planning to open the wall in the bathroom. I didn't tell him about the fingers. I waited until midnight. The house was silent. I took a deep breath and walked to the bathroom. The vent cover was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it that way. My hand shook as I gripped the crowbar. I was going to open the wall. I had to know what was living inside. I swung the crowbar into the drywall. The impact sent a shock through my arms, and the plaster cracked with a sound like breaking bones. I pulled the crowbar back and struck again, harder. A hole opened, revealing darkness behind the wall. I aimed the heavy-duty flashlight into the gap. The beam cut through dust and cobwebs, landing on something pale. It looked like a hand, fingers curled inward. I stopped breathing. My mind screamed that I should run, call the police, do anything but keep looking. But my body wouldn't move. I leaned closer, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The hand didn't move. It was too still, too perfect, like a store mannequin. I told myself it was a pipe, a reflection, anything but what it looked like. Then I saw the nail polish. Red. Chipped. I remembered my wife used to paint her nails that shade. She stopped years ago, said it made her feel like a doll. The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. The beam rolled, casting wild shadows across the walls. I fell to my knees, gasping. I forced myself to pick up the flashlight. I aimed it back into the hole, my hand shaking so hard the beam danced. The hand was still there. I could see the arm now, disappearing deeper into the wall cavity. The skin was waxy, almost translucent. I reached out with my free hand, fingers brushing against the cold surface. It was real. Solid. I pulled back as if burned. My mind raced through possibilities. A body. Someone had put a body in the wall. But the hand was too clean, too preserved. It didn't smell. It should have smelled. The air in the bathroom was stale but not putrid. I stood up, the crowbar still in my other hand. I looked at the vent cover on the floor. It had been there the whole time, in this house I bought 6 months ago. I had never checked. I had never thought to check. Now I couldn't unsee it. I backed out of the bathroom, my eyes fixed on the hole. The darkness inside seemed to pulse, like it was breathing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, the crowbar across my lap, staring at the bathroom door. Morning came, and with it, a thin, gray light. I hadn't moved all night. The crowbar was cold against my jeans. I got up, legs stiff, and walked to the bathroom. The hole in the wall looked different in daylight, smaller, less threatening. I told myself I had imagined it. I knelt down and looked inside. The hand was still there. I took a photo with my phone. The flash illuminated the space for a split second, revealing more than I wanted to see. The arm was attached to a shoulder. The shoulder led to a torso. There was a body in the wall. I called in sick to work. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't call the police. What would I say? I found a hand in my bathroom wall. They would think I was crazy. They would ask why I broke the wall. They would find the vent cover I had removed weeks ago. I had to think. I had to understand what this was. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. My hands were steady now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. Something was wrong with this house. Something was wrong with me. I had lived here for 6 months. I had showered in that bathroom every day. The hand had been there the whole time. I pulled up the real estate listing for the house on my phone. The photos showed clean, empty rooms. The bathroom looked normal. I checked the date. The listing was from 2 years ago. The previous owner was a woman in her 60s. She had died in the house. The listing said natural causes. I searched her name online. There was an obituary. She had no children, no close relatives. The house had been sold by the bank. I looked at the photo of her face. She looked kind. I wondered if she knew about the hand in the wall. I wondered if she had put it there. The thought made my stomach turn. I put down the phone and went back to the bathroom. The crowbar was still on the floor. I picked it up and widened the hole. The drywall crumbled easily. I pulled away chunks until I could see the entire figure. It was a woman. She was dressed in a simple white dress. Her eyes were closed. Her hands were folded over her chest. She looked peaceful, like she was sleeping. But she wasn't breathing. I knew she wasn't breathing. I reached out and touched her cheek. It was cold but not rigid. The skin gave slightly under my fingers. She had been preserved somehow. I pulled my hand back and looked at my fingers. They were clean. No dust, no decay. I started to understand. This wasn't a crime scene. I stepped back and sat on the edge of the bathtub. The woman in the wall didn't move. She just lay there, perfectly still, perfectly preserved. I thought about the vent cover I had removed. I thought about the shadows that moved wrong. I thought about the fingers I had seen in the dark. They were hers. She had been reaching out. Not to grab me. To show me. I didn't know why. But I felt it now, a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone. In its place was a quiet, terrible understanding. I had been living with a dead woman for 6 months. She had been there the whole time. And she had been trying to tell me something. I looked at her face again. Her lips were slightly parted, as if she had been about to speak. I leaned closer, my breath fogging in the cold air. I whispered to her. I said, "I'm sorry." I don't know why I said it. But it felt right. I stood up and walked out of the bathroom. I left the hole open. I left the crowbar on the floor. I went to the living room and sat down. The sunlight was brighter now. The house felt different. It felt emptier. And yet, I didn't feel alone. I looked at the bathroom door. It was open. I could see the edge of the hole from where I sat. I waited. I didn't know what for. But I waited. I pulled up the real estate listing for the house on my phone. The photos showed clean, empty rooms. The bathroom looked normal. I checked the date. The listing was from 2 years ago. The previous owner was a woman in her 60s. She had died in the house. Natural causes, the article said. But the comments on the listing mentioned strange noises, doors opening at night, a smell of rot that never quite went away. I looked at the bathroom photo again. The vent cover was missing in the picture. I zoomed in. There was a dark patch on the wall behind the toilet, exactly where my crowbar had struck. I stepped back and sat on the edge of the bathtub. The woman in the wall didn't move. She just lay there, perfectly still, perfectly preserved. I thought about the vent cover I had removed. I thought about the shadows that moved wrong. I thought about the cold spot in the hallway. This woman had been there for 2 years. 2 years of breathing her air, walking past her bones. The realtor had said the house was clean. The inspector had said everything was fine. But someone had known. Someone had sealed her in that wall and sold the house anyway. I found the realtor's number in the listing. I called it. It rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. A cheerful woman's voice said she was unavailable, but to leave a message. I hung up. I tried again. Same result. I texted the number instead. I wrote, "I found her." I hit send. 2 minutes passed. 3. Then the dots appeared. Someone was typing. The dots disappeared. Then a message came through. It said, "Leave the house now." I stared at the screen. The message was from the realtor's number. But the realtor had died in a car accident 6 months ago. I walked to the front window and looked out. The street was empty. No cars, no people, just the orange glow of a single street lamp. I checked the time. It was 2 in the morning. I had been in the house for 12 hours. 12 hours since I broke through that wall. I looked at my phone again. The message was still there. Leave the house now. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. But where would I go? The woman in the wall had been here for 2 years. Someone had kept her secret. Someone was still keeping it. And they knew I had found her. I turned from the window and froze. At the end of the hallway, near the bathroom door, a shadow stood. It was tall, thin, and utterly still. It didn't move like a person. It didn't breathe. I stared at it, my heart hammering. The shadow shifted, just slightly, and I saw the outline of a hand. It was pointing at me. I fumbled for the light switch. I flipped it. The hallway was empty. The bathroom was empty. But the vent cover I had removed was back in place. Screwed in tight, as if no one had ever touched it. I watched the shadow shift, a slow ripple across its surface like disturbed water. It took a step forward, and I felt the cold air rush past me. My breath caught, a tight knot in my chest. The shadow moved again, closer now, and I saw it had no feet. It simply glided over the floorboards, silent and wrong. I pressed myself against the window frame, my fingers digging into the wood. The shadow stopped, tilting its head as if listening. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The hallway light flickered, and the shadow stretched, growing taller, thinner, reaching toward me. I closed my eyes, counting to 10, hoping it would be gone when I opened them. When I looked again, the hallway was empty. But the cold remained, a chill that clung to my skin. My phone buzzed. A text from the realtor. It said, "Who is this?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "I'm at the house on Maple Street. The one with the iron gate." I hit send. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then another message, "You shouldn't be there." I felt my stomach drop. I wrote back, "Why?" The reply came instantly, "Because it's not empty." I looked up from the phone, scanning the dark room. Nothing moved. I typed, "What do you mean?" The dots appeared again, but this time they stayed for a long time. Finally, a single word, "Run." I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs were locked, my feet glued to the floor. The closet door at the far end of the room creaked open, just an inch. A sliver of darkness peered out. I heard a whisper, soft and low, like someone breathing my name from far away. My phone buzzed again. "The realtor, it knows you're here." The closet door swung open wider, and I saw a pair of pale hands gripping the edge from inside. They were too long, too thin, with fingers bent at unnatural angles. I backed away, my shoulder hitting the wall. The hands pulled, and a face emerged from the darkness. It had no eyes, just hollow sockets, and a mouth stretched into a silent scream. I ran. I threw open the front door and bolted down the steps, my feet slapping against the cracked pavement. The street was still empty, the orange street lamp flickering overhead. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if it followed. My lungs burned as I sprinted toward the end of the block, my phone still clutched in my hand. It buzzed again. I glanced down. The realtor, don't stop. I kept running, past dark houses with boarded windows, past rusted cars, past a playground with a swing that moved on its own. The wind picked up, howling through the empty streets. I reached a corner and stopped, gasping for air. The street ahead was dark, no lights, no houses. Just a wall of blackness. I turned around. The house was still there, a dark silhouette against the night sky. But one window was lit now, the one on the second floor. A figure stood in it, watching me. It raised a hand and pressed it against the glass, palm flat. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. My phone buzzed one last time. The realtor, it's too late. It saw you leave. I looked at the screen, then back at the window. The figure was gone. But the light remained, a single golden square in the darkness. I started walking backward, my eyes fixed on the house. The street lamp flickered and went out, plunging the block into total blackness. I turned around. The house was still there, a dark silhouette against the night sky. But one window was lit now, the one on the second floor. A figure stood in it, watching me. It raised a hand and pressed it against the glass, palm flat. I felt a cold shiver race down my spine, my breath catching in my throat. The hand moved slowly, tracing a pattern on the window, like it was writing something. I squinted, trying to make out the shapes, but the light was too dim, the glass too fogged. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the distant hum of traffic. I wanted to look away, to run again, but something held me there, a morbid curiosity that rooted me to the spot. The figure didn't move, just kept its hand pressed against the glass, waiting. I knew I had to go back inside. I stepped closer, my feet moving on their own accord, drawn by an invisible force. The hand on the window continued its slow, deliberate motion, tracing letters in reverse. I watched as the smudges formed words, backwards and distorted, but clear enough to read. It said my name. Not a whisper, not a guess, but my full name, spelled out with chilling precision. My blood ran cold. I knew that name, but I had never told it to anyone in this town. The hand paused, then pressed harder, the glass bowing slightly under the pressure. A low groan escaped from the house, like the building itself was in pain. I took another step, then another, until I was standing at the bottom of the porch steps, staring up at the window. The figure tilted its head, and I saw a flash of white, a face, pale and featureless, staring down at me. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice was trapped in my throat, a dry knot that wouldn't loosen. The face in the window was blank, no eyes, no mouth, just a smooth expanse of pale skin that seemed to absorb the light around it. It tilted its head again, as if studying me, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't a person. This was something else, something that had been waiting in that house, waiting for me. The hand on the glass slowly withdrew, leaving behind a faint outline of its palm, glowing slightly in the dim light. The window slid open with a soft hiss, and a cold draft spilled out, carrying the scent of dust and decay. The figure leaned out, its head rotating at an impossible angle, and I heard a voice, soft and familiar, whisper my name again. It was my mother's voice. My mother had been dead for 3 years. I knew that voice, the gentle lilt, the soft cadence, the way she always said my name like it was a secret. But it couldn't be her. I watched as the figure turned from the window, its movements jerky and disjointed, like a puppet on tangled strings. It walked away from the light, disappearing into the darkness of the attic. The window remained open, the curtain fluttering in the breeze. I felt a pull, a desperate need to follow, to see if it was really her. My hand reached for the porch railing, my foot lifted to take the first step up. But a part of me, the sane part, screamed to stop. I hesitated, my heart racing, my mind a storm of fear and longing. The house stood silent, waiting, the open window like a mouth inviting me inside. I knew I had to choose. I let go of the railing. My hand dropped to my side, and I took a step back, then another. The house loomed before me, dark and silent, but I couldn't go back inside. Not tonight. I turned and walked away, my steps slow and heavy, each one a battle against the invisible thread that tried to pull me back. The whisper came again, softer this time, almost a plea, but I didn't stop. I reached the end of the street, the orange street lamp flickering one last time before going dark. I didn't look back. I kept walking, into the deeper shadows of the night, leaving the house and its pale watcher behind. But as I rounded the corner, I felt a cold hand brush against my neck, light as a feather, and I knew it had followed me. I walked until the house was a shadow behind me, until my legs ached and my breath came in ragged gasps. The cemetery gate stood open, rusted hinges creaking in the wind. I knew this place. My mother's grave lay somewhere among the crooked headstones, the grass overgrown and wild. I stepped inside, the iron gate groaning shut behind me. The silence was thick, broken only by the crunch of dead leaves under my shoes. I found her marker, a simple stone with her name and dates. I knelt, pressing my palm to the cold granite. The earth beneath it was soft, freshly turned. My hand trembled. I heard a whisper, not from the grave, but from behind me. I turned slowly, my heart hammering. The figure stood at the gate, its blank face now wet with tears that seemed to fall from nowhere. It raised a hand, and I saw it was holding something. A locket. My locket. The one I had buried with her. I knew that locket. It held a tiny lock of her hair, a piece of me I had given her when I was 6 years old. I had clasped it around her neck before they closed the casket. Now it dangled from the figure's fingers, swinging gently in the still air. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold metal. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. I took the locket, and as my hand closed around it, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. The figure's head tilted, and from the smooth expanse of its face, a voice emerged, soft and broken. It said my name again, but this time it was different. It was a plea. I opened the locket, and inside, instead of hair, there was a tiny rolled piece of paper. I unrolled it with shaking fingers. The handwriting was hers. It said only 3 words. I am sorry. I read the words again and again. I am sorry. For what? For leaving? For the accident? For the lies I had told myself for 3 years? I looked up, and the figure was fading, its edges blurring like smoke in the wind. I wanted to scream, to ask it to stay, to explain. But my voice was still trapped. Instead, I clutched the locket to my chest and felt a strange peace settle over me. The figure's last whisper was barely audible. It said, I never meant to leave you. I was taken. Then it was gone, leaving only the cold night air and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I stood up, my legs weak, and looked at the grave. The freshly turned earth seemed to pulse with a faint light, then still. I understood then. She had been trying to reach me, to tell me the truth. But I had been too afraid to listen. I walked back to the house as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. The sky turned from black to gray to a soft pink, and the world seemed to wake around me. Birds began to sing, and the mist lifted from the ground. The house stood silent, no longer menacing, just old and tired. I climbed the porch steps and paused at the door. I didn't need to go inside. Not yet. I sat on the steps, the locket warm in my hand, and I opened it again. The note was still there, the ink slightly smudged from my tears. I folded it carefully and placed it back inside. I would keep it always. The story wasn't over. There were answers I still needed, questions I had to ask. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt hope. I looked up at the window where I had seen her face, and I smiled. Goodbye, Mom. I'll find the truth. I promise. The sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the yard. I closed the locket and tucked it into my pocket, feeling its weight against my heart. I stood up and stretched, my muscles sore from the night's journey. I knew what I had to do. I would go back to the cemetery, to the records office, to the hospital where she had died. I would dig through every file, every memory, until I understood what had happened to her. The faceless figure had shown me that death was not the end. There was something more, something I had been too blind to see. I walked to the edge of the porch and looked out at the world. It was the same as before, yet completely different. The air smelled of wet earth and blooming flowers. I took a deep breath and stepped off the porch, my feet landing on the gravel path. I didn't look back. The house, the cemetery, the ghost, they were all part of me now. But I was no longer afraid. I was ready.